Hi, my name's Annalisa, and I am going to talk to you guys today about being vegan and celebrating my 8-year veganiversary today. It's November 1st, which is also considered to be national. Is it national or international? I think it's International World Vegan Day. I don't know. It's Vegan Day, November 1st. And 8 years ago, I decided to go vegan on this day because I had been vegan before and I had stopped and I wished that I had never stopped. And so I'm going to kind of share my story as what inspired me to go vegan the first time, why I stopped being vegan, why I went back to being vegan, and how the last 8 years as a vegan have been. One of the reasons why I wanted to make this video was I just thought it would be a fun kind of mark in time for me in terms of commemorating this, anniversary in my life. Being sober, it's like every year I celebrate sobriety, but I also feel that way about my veganism because it's definitely more than just a diet. It's a belief system. It's a lifestyle choice. There's a lot that goes into being vegan, and it's supposedly very hard for most people. I find it harder to not be vegan, honestly. At this point, I can't imagine ever not being vegan. Another reason why I kind of felt like doing this video is because I feel like one of the things I've noticed about a lot of kind of plant-based vegan influencers and celebrities are people that once they get to like the 7-8 year mark, a lot of people stop. And usually there's a lot of really like valid understand, like I'm not a militant vegan. Like I'm not one of those people that finger waves and comes down on everybody around me. My husband's not vegan. My dogs used to be vegan. They're not vegan anymore. So I'm the only vegan in my family and in my house. My sister is mostly vegan, but I think she occasionally, breaks it. But yeah, I don't. I'm pretty, I would say I'm hardcore in my personal veganism, but I'm not one of those people that's like, shaming other people for not being vegan. So that doesn't really fall in my value system. So I feel like I have to walk my walk in that way. But, I think that it's really common for people at the 8-year mark, or at least it seems that way, to give up on it. And I think that, like I said, everybody has their own health journey, their own story with that stuff. And, no judgment if this lifestyle doesn't work for you anymore. But I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about veganism and plant-based eating that I kind of want to debunk a little bit. And again, like I want to preface this with saying that everyone's health is their own journey, story. Like I don't judge what people need to do for their health. I'm currently having my own issues with my health that have nothing to do with being vegan. And so there's a lot of misconceptions that people have about dietary choices and how those influence your health or don't influence your health. And I think that what I've learned after having a huge interest in nutrition since my late teens is that your health is an individual path, and there's certain lifestyle and dietary choices that only are going to be best for you. And I do think genetics have a lot to do with what our bodies do well with. I mean, there's so much to it. There's so much about our little petri dishes and, our environment, our genetics, our enzymes, our mental health. Like so many things go into how our body processes and breaks down food and nutrition and all of that. So I don't want to I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not an educator. So I'm not trying to act like I know all these things. But I do feel like I have some experience under my belt as someone who's been vegan as long as I have. And I do feel like I have some good tidbits and some good, dispelling some myths and debunking some maybe things that people still, after all these years of vegan information being out in the ether, I feel like people are still very naive or ignorant to. And so if you happen to watch this, maybe it's interesting or you know, just more things that maybe you weren't aware of about veganism that you can go, oh, I didn't know that. That's really helpful. So if we want to get into my story as a vegan a little bit. So when I was in, well, most of my life I've had stomach issues, and I've also been really like sensitive to animal products. I was raised vegetarian, so I didn't really have a lot of meat in my life in the first formative years of my life. And then I had a lot of dairy growing up. I loved dairy. I was obsessed with cheese and milk and just constantly consuming it. And I was also always sick as a kid. It seemed like every school year, I'd start the year out after summer really strong. And then after a couple months, I would end up sick and I'd miss months of school. And it was just this repetitive pattern. Another thing that was really common for me as a kid for years was waking up in the morning with mucus and having to sit and hack it all out in the shower in the morning. It's really disgusting, but that was normal for me. That was like an everyday normal thing. And so I just thought that was normal. Like, I just thought like, this is what people do in the mornings, is throw, like, hack up phlegm, you know, and that kind of thing. And so it's interesting because it's like, looking back at that, nobody, like, this was the 90s when I was a little kid, like nobody really sat and kind of like worried about it too much in my family, which is probably why I also thought it was normal. I don't know if my parents really knew how much of that I was doing, like in the mornings. I don't know. I was really phlegmy. It was a really phlegmy kid. And once I got into like kind of my mid-teens, like 15, 16, I started getting really sick from dairy. And so I would, and not right away, like usually what would happen is sometimes I'd eat it and I'd be fine, you know, and I always was having stomach aches, but like, again, I thought that was normal. And then I would have like days where I would eat like a slice of pizza, or I would have like crackers and brie and, you know, like fancy cheeses and all this stuff. And usually pretty like good cheese too. Like yeah, I'm from Washington originally. So, you know, my friend was working at Pike Place Market and we would get fancy cheese and eat the cheese. And I would wake up in the middle of the night and just start throwing up like everything that I had eaten. And gradually I started to kind of put together that I might be lactose intolerant. And so I stopped eating dairy as consistently. I didn't go like full, you know, cold turkey, but I just started to kind of watch it. And, you know, it's kind of like, you know, a learning history. Like when you start getting sick from something, you start to have an aversion to it, right? So at about 17, I had like veganism was starting to get really hip in the rock and roll punk scene that I was a part of. And in Portland, it was really booming. And then vegetarianism and veganism was popular in Seattle. And I started to have some friends, you know, and more people that I knew going vegan or vegetarian. And it was just a really common thing in the music scene for people to be veg. And so, and I was raised vegetarian, you know, so it wasn't totally uncommon for me to choose vegetarian often at restaurants more so than eating meat, because meat always felt kind of funky to me. I always kind of had a weird feeling around it. I liked certain things, but you know, it definitely felt not necessarily authentic to who I felt like I was as a person. And at that point too, my family all ate meat. Like my parents were vegetarian when I was little, but they all ate meat by the time that I was like in elementary school and stuff. So this book came out when I was around 18 or 19, I think. And it was called The Skinny Bitch. I don't know if you guys remember this book, but I think it came out in 2007, maybe. And now that title would obviously be super problematic. But this was like, you know, I mean, diet culture has been really popular for a long time. And I think that the tagline of the book worked. Like it drew people in to, you know, be like, I want to be a skinny bitch. And so I remember I think one of my friends bought it and told me about it. And then I bought it and told another friend about it and that kind of thing. But the book itself was actually about veganism. And it was about not just veganism, but also ingredients in food that are toxic, you know, and hydrogenated oils, and how it's really important that you start reading labels on the things that you're buying, because it's not just about being skinny, it's about being healthy. Like this is killing us as people. This is why America is obese. This is why people are having heart failure and diabetes and all these problems and stuff. And it was really eye-opening for me because I didn't understand why I was having a lot of the problems I was having with my weight and with my, digestion. And also, I had really bad insomnia, growing up. I also, had all that phlegmy stuff happening. Just all kinds of things were starting to kind of make sense to me, where I was like, oh, wow, like I consumed a lot of sugar. I consumed a lot of processed foods, hydrogenated oils, junk food, all kinds of stuff. The 90s, like what was considered healthy in the 90s is just insane now today to think about or whatever. So and at the time too, I was actually dating somebody who was like, had been vegan for a few months or something. He was a junk food vegan, so it's not like he was eating healthy, but I actually got really interested in health and nutrition around that time. So 17, 18 years old. And my mom also had been really interested in that stuff, which is why she was vegetarian when she had me. And so there were some books that she had recommended to me that I also bought when I was around 17, 18 to kind of go with my journey in terms of like kind of figuring out how to be healthier and care about myself in that way. So one of the books that my mom recommended to me was Perfect Health by Deepak Chopra, which is a book that has a lot to do with Eastern philosophies on health. It's Ayurvedic predominantly. So you take the test to see what your doshas are and all of that. And so I did this at 17 and started playing around with Ayurvedic health. And that was actually really fun. And then this was the other book that my mom told me about, which was called Healing with Whole Foods. And it's also Eastern Chinese kind of tradition on food, just on basically what you need. And so I started eating in alignment with a lot of this kind of stuff as well. And then a book that I bought on my own when I went vegan that I found that is pretty outdated in some ways, but there's still some decent information in terms of nutrition, was this vegan nutrition book. So I've had this one since I was 17 as well. I think this was actually my mom's copy, but I've had these books since I was that young, and they've really come in handy in my health journey in terms of just kind of educating myself on, how to see the body like as more of a mind, soul, body connection. And then also what you need as a vegan or plant-based person. And, that I thought I still had the Skinny Bitch book, but I couldn't find it on my shelf. But, maybe they changed the name of it by now because it's not really PC anymore. But that book was really, from what I remember, transformative for me in terms of like I was drawn to it because I was interested in like, how do I get thin? And then, this was like me being a teenager. And then it ended up being more of this like nutrition book and like education book on our food system and like the horrors of it and all this stuff. So I went vegan and was vegan for 5 years, and honestly was the best decision I could have made. I lost a lot of weight. I started having a lot of energy. I wouldn't say I was sleeping better, but I think that my poor sleep had more to do with some of my anxiety issues that were coming up during that time too. And I really saw a lot of benefits to how my stomach was breaking down and digesting things. And yeah, there was just a lot about it that I fell in love with. And I lived in Portland too at the time, and Portland had such a big vegan culture. It was so easy to be vegan there. But one of the things that was happening to me a lot during that time was that I wasn't really getting a lot of support in my veganism from my family. And I also had friends that were starting to quit being vegan and going back to eating meat, which, young people do that a lot. And then also, when I stopped dating my ex-boyfriend, and my husband and I got together, I was vegan the first year that we were together. And he's not vegan, and he's always been really supportive of my veganism, but I feel like the combination of being with someone not vegan and my family kind of, like diminishing it or not really understanding it, making fun of it, just wore me down. And I just kind of quit caring about being vegan. I was very much like, well, I like to eat predominantly veg, but maybe I don't need to be this hardcore with it. Like maybe I can have, in social situations, I can just relax and still have some meat and stuff. But I was still lactose intolerant. It's a very real, thing. And so I just was like, I just won't eat dairy anymore. So I just, I stayed not eating dairy, and then I went back to eating meat, and I started having a lot of digestion problems and stomach issues. I started struggling with constipation. and I started struggling with the opposite too, where I was having a lot more issues with like holding it, I guess. I started having diarrhea, essentially, like all of that kind of stuff, and painful stomach aches. I started waking up in the middle of the night throwing up, just not feeling good, just tons of problems, right? And so I was not vegan for a few years. I can't remember how long before at 25, I believe I was, November 1st, 8 years ago. I just was over it. I was over experiencing this discomfort in my body. I had gained, weight in ways that I was unhappy with. And I just had remembered, like, when I was vegan, I felt the best I've ever felt in my life. And I feel like I need to go back to being vegan. So that's what I did on November 1st, 8 years ago. And I haven't looked back. I don't regret it. I'm still really happy being vegan. I love being vegan. And there's been a lot of books that have come into my ether that I haven't bought or owned, but there's a lot of good books out there, like Forks Over Knives is a documentary that also has cookbooks and a great website and a great Instagram that has so many resources. And I don't have their book, but I did follow a Forks Over Knives protocol for a long time when I first went vegan. That was pretty intense, but it was great. It made me feel amazing. I really love the Forks Over Knives whole message and just the whole way that they approach food. I think it's really great. One of the things for me about being vegan too, that on a personal level is really important, is that there's kind of this movement in our culture on one side that thinks they're being progressive by trying to make consumption of food not political, where we shouldn't have shame around what we want to eat or what we want to consume. And there's certain aspects to that I understand, but I think that there's no way that you can make land usage not political. A big reason why we have a lot of the deforestation and problems that we have on the planet are a result of agriculture and land usage being taken away from indigenous people and, being used for cattle grazing and things on the planet that are not sustainable. And that's political. And so to me, one of the ways that we can vote is with our dollar. And one of the most impactful ways that we can influence corporations and companies to be more sustainable and care about the planet and care about animals is to be vegan. And so, or mostly vegetarian even. So I think that for me, food is political for me, and it's very much about land usage and what we're giving our dollar to. With that said, there's plenty of problematic industries that I give my dollar to, like Amazon, like I order things from Amazon. I am not perfect. I do not have solar panels on my house yet. I am not the most sustainable person I know by any means at all. I think veganism is my way of feeling like I'm doing something that's beneficial. I am not a perfect person. And, I live with someone who's not vegan. I'm married to someone who's not vegan, and my dogs aren't vegan, so I'm definitely not saying this stuff because I think that I'm perfect or that I think that I don't have work to do on certain areas of my life, because I do. As a human, I have tons of work to do as a human, definitely. But for me, I think food is kind of where I feel passion in terms of where I feel like I can vote with my dollar. And I feel like I've seen so many benefits from being vegan in terms of my personal health that it's just, I can't imagine ever going back. I feel completely repulsed by the idea of eating another being's flesh and like organs and just all that, like decomposing, rotting flesh. Like, why would I want to put that in my body? Like, it's disgusting to me. So I feel like I can't like mentally overcome that. I've definitely, the first time I was vegan, I think had more to do with dietary needs. And by the second time I went vegan, it was dietary needs plus all of the ethical and kind of moral sides of it. And so I did a lot of brainwashing of myself in the sense that I was like, if I'm going to stick to being vegan this time, I really got to do the work and watch the films and the documentaries on what this is doing to the planet and what this does to the animals, because I don't want to go back to this like fake kind of ignorance, and then also have all these digestion and health issues, and just be kind of trapped in that. So I watched Earthlings, which is one of the most traumatic movies I've ever watched. And there was one about speciesism that I can't remember the name of anymore that I watched. And then, obviously Cowspiracy was out at the time. And Forks Over Knives. There's so many. I spent like the first kind of 3 years of being vegan again, just inundating myself with not just vegan documentaries, but documentaries about the food industry. And also, there's that sugar film that came out that was about the impacts of sugar in our body. Obviously the one about McDonald's, the fast food one. I don't know. I've watched so many of them and I'm kind of over it. Like at this point, when a new one comes out, I feel very like been there, done that. Cause I'm just like, I get it, and I'm vegan and I don't really consume like processed sugar very often. Maybe I have now a little bit because of Halloween, but anyways, so yeah, that's kind of a little bit about me and how I ended up being vegan. And then the last 8 years of being vegan have been really interesting, because I think here's kind of where I want to get into dispelling some of the myths around veganism. I think that there's this idea that if you eat vegan, you're going to be really thin and really fit. And that's definitely not true, because there's plenty of food that's vegan that's also not healthy. And also calories are calories, and there's good calories and there's bad calories. And in a lot of vegan food that's processed, there's a lot of bad calories. And so being fit and skinny has nothing to do with being vegan, and being vegan does not guarantee that you're going to be fit and skinny. And so if you're following anybody in the ether that says you have to be vegan, or veganism is the best diet to be fit and skinny, that's not how fitness works. And the thing that's really important, I think, is that there's also misconceptions that you have to eat meat in order to be buff, or in order to have enough protein, and in order to like build muscle at the gym. That's also completely not true. You can be vegetarian or vegan and also be super buff and also build muscle at the gym. There's plenty of plant proteins that will give you muscle. The first I guess 5 years that I was vegan, before I started having chronic fatigue syndrome, which is not related to being vegan, I was at the gym every day, walking 10 miles a day. Like I had muscle on my body, and I'm short, I'm curvy, I'm Hispanic. I didn't lose my curves. I didn't lose my boobs. They were smaller then than they are now, but I still had boobs. I still had an ass. And so there's also this misconception with a lot of people, like, oh, if you go vegan, you're going to end up like frail and thin and dying and all this stuff. And no, like, I think that if that were true, a lot more people would go vegan, because a lot of people want to be really skinny. And it's, that book, The Skinny Bitch, that was kind of about like ingredients and weight loss, like is also misleading, because you can eat all those ways and that healthy and still have weight on your body. I actually am a testament to that. So when I started to develop health problems, this was in 2020, I started to have some pain in my body that was starting to feel like it didn't make any sense. And I started to think that I had fibromyalgia. I have another video on this, like what it's like living with chronic fatigue syndrome. So I got diagnosed in August with chronic fatigue syndrome. And in order to get that diagnosis, you have to have a lot of lab work done. So you have to make sure you're not deficient in anything. You have to make sure that you don't have any autoimmune disorders. Like there's so many things that you have to make sure or rule out that you don't have in order to have chronic fatigue syndrome diagnosed as something that you're dealing with, because it's kind of like a rule out process. And so in 2020, I started having these issues, and I didn't have insurance. I couldn't afford to get the lab work done, and I didn't have a doctor, like none of that stuff. So I spent 3 years just kind of stuck in this bubble and doing the Medical Medium Cleanse to Heal book. So I have that at the bottom here, and this is supposed to help with people that were having a lot of the issues that I had going on. I put all of my books here that I have that are some of them are cookbooks, vegan cookbooks, and then some of them are just old school nutrition health books that I have. I don't think this one's vegan, but it has Ayurvedic stuff. So I was told about medical medium when I was starting to have these health issues, and I just went to it because I didn't really have anywhere else to go while I was waiting for doctor and insurance stuff. And, you know, there was some pretty big claims in terms of what this helps with the cleanse in here. I started doing it every month. It has helped. It's helped a ton. I actually stopped doing it this year regularly, and I want to go back to doing it regularly again because it was helping so much. But guess what? This book does not advertise itself as vegan. And guess what it is? It's all vegan. It's raw vegan food. So you basically just get put on a raw vegan diet for 9 days, and that's what's healing all of your symptoms or whatever. So when I got that book, I was like, this is just reminding me of everything I was doing with forks over knives when I was first, you know, navigating that. So I actually really like that because I can kind of modify things between what I've learned with forks over knives and then what some of this protocol is. And one of the other things in the Cleanse to Heal book that I got really into years ago, before I even knew about this medical medium nonsense, is juicing. And so I also watched this documentary. Let's see, where's his book? Joe. So there's a documentary on Netflix about this guy, and he essentially was like middle-aged and having digestion problems. And yeah, the documentary is called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, and it came out in 2010. So I watched that documentary, and you know, he's got these pictures of how he got his life back on track. And I think he was diabetic and he got rid of his diabetes, and it was all through his juice cleansing. And so I started juicing. I still do. It helps a lot with inflammation in my body. And this has nothing to do with being vegan, but this is just added things in my vegan lifestyle that have made big differences for me. So, you know, then I have books like this that people have gifted me that are ways that I don't eat regularly. This is all so decadent, like way too much for me. Too many ingredients and too many comfort food options, but it's all so good. Roasted carrots. Yeah, there's some good stuff in here. So another book that I got recently that I actually was already eating pretty in alignment with, but there's some fun recipes in here, is this nutritionist that did Eating for Hormone Balance, a plant-based guide. So I would say that this is newer in the kind of vegan nutrition world, which I'm really glad that this is starting to come out more in the ether of the mainstream, because one of the things that I remember feeling was really missing for me in the Cleanse to Heal book, and also some of the past nutrition stuff that I was reading, was how to eat when you're menstruating or in certain parts of your cycle. That's always been kind of a missing piece for me. And this book was really helpful for some of that. And then also I have been, at the beginning of the year, I was working with a wellness coach named Megan, and she has her brand, I guess is what you call it, is called Wellness as a Way of Life. And she did a class at the beginning of the year that I'm still kind of a part of. And she was really good at kind of educating and introducing me to how to eat, you know, more in alignment with my cycle. And so basically I've had a lot of education and books over the years through just, you know, reading things online, reading things in books, you know, talking to wellness coaches, talking to other vegans. You know, there's so much information on the internet, watching videos. I've done a lot of different things. I've, you know, tried a lot of different companies, a lot of different supplements. And when I started having these health problems in 2020, of course I got nervous. Like, what if my veganism is catching up to me? And I'm like, maybe I'm B12 and vitamin D deficient. Maybe I have magnesium deficiency. And that's why, you know, I'm starting to have all these issues. Maybe I'm having hormonal imbalances. My mom has had severe anemia, and she's not vegan, but she's struggled, you know, with anemia due to her endometriosis. And maybe, you know, I have something going on hormonally that's like contributing to me in this way that's, you know, tied to being vegan. I was ready to be told by the doctor that I was severely deficient in things, and I was going to eat some humble pie on my vegan high horse if that was the case. So health issues start in 2020. Flash forward to this year, I finally get health insurance and get all my tests done. And I'm proud to say that as a vegan of 8 years, I am not deficient in anything. So, and I don't even take my supplements every day religiously. So I think that, yeah, I'm not B12 deficient. I'm not vitamin D deficient. I'm not protein deficient. I'm not magnesium deficient. I'm not like anemic, you know, I don't even have an autoimmune disorder. Like my thyroid is great. My thyroid is doing fine. And guess what? No hormonal imbalances. I'm on paper looking very good. So even though that was really frustrating to hear, because, you know, obviously having health problems sucks. And then if you get your labs done and everything looks really good, then it's even more frustrating because you're like, okay, if everything is so good, why am I feeling so bad? And I would say that, you know, now I've learned a lot more about, you know, chronic fatigue syndrome and stuff too, but there's misconceptions about being plant-based, where if you're vegan, like this is what happened for me, was that if I'm vegan and if I'm plant-based, I'm going to avoid all these health problems. Like I'm not going to end up with diabetes. I'm not going to end up obese. I'm not going to end up having complications from being obese. I'm not going to have heart problems, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, that was a big motivator and drive for me to stay vegan. And then when I started having health issues, and it's not related to being vegan or being deficient in anything, it really opened my eyes to the fact that no matter what we do in certain aspects of life, things can still happen with our health, even when we're doing our best. And so I think that, you know, reflecting on being vegan for 8 years, my drive to stay vegan are those great labs. You know, it's my lab work and my hormone balances and my thyroid and all of that stuff. I do believe all of those levels are as immaculate as they are because of how much I've cared about my health over the last 8 years and how much work I've done at maintaining my nutrition and, you know, doing it as a vegan. Because when you're vegan, you do have to be really on top of those things, because there's certain things like vitamin D and B12 that you really need to make sure you're getting. But I have friends who aren't vegan who are also getting deficient in vitamin D and B12. So in my mind, it's interesting to me where we have this idea that if we eat meat and dairy, we're somehow not going to end up with deficiencies. And that's just not true. So many people who eat meat and dairy end up with deficiencies: B12, D, iron, magnesium, protein. You can still end up deficient as a meat eater, as, you know, a vegetarian, as a vegan. So caring about your nutritional intake is something that I think you have to do regardless of what path you choose, if this is what you care about. The thing for me about veganism is not only can I care about my nutritional intake, but I'm also caring about animals and how that impacts the earth and everything. Let's talk about weight loss and veganism, because that's also something that I kind of mentioned that was a big misconception. So another thing that's been really frustrating is, since I've had this chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia stuff, I haven't been able to work out the way that I used to because of what happens with post-exterior malaise. And so I basically have, when I'm physically exerting myself, these relapses where my body goes into like kind of a shock and all this pain starts in my body, and it's excruciating. And so it's also kind of like when I was lactose intolerant and I started throwing up from eating things that, you know, had dairy in them. It's the same, where it's like once you do something and it makes you feel that way, you're less likely to want to do it again. So with post-exterior malaise, it's hard because things that I used to really enjoy, like weightlifting and, you know, yoga and things like that, can cause me to have these relapses of pain that is just awful. So I'm not working out the way that I used to. I'm still walking. I love to go on walks. I love to do like certain levels of activity that I can handle. But, you know, I was a gym rat and I like to box. Like I got really ripped. Like this shirt, when I bought it, was like loose on me. Like now, like I have things, I have like bat wings hanging out of it, you know, like it's tight on me. So I am a really healthy person. I eat tons of fruits and vegetables. I avoid processed foods. I avoid hydrogenated oils, and you know, I'm not a junk food vegan. I cook, I would say 95% of my meals at home. I rarely eat out. You know, I was doing that cleanse once a month, which I stopped, which I think is why I've gained more weight. But basically, I put on 25 pounds just from the lack of working out, you know, and that's eating fruits and vegetables every day. And, you know, I eat like chickpea pasta, like I'm gluten-free too. I'm predominantly gluten-free. I break gluten-free occasionally when I'm out, like on vacation or at a restaurant, but at home I'm gluten-free. And I don't eat a lot of like processed grains. Like I have a chickpea pasta that I make. I have gluten-free, like, yeah, like I tortillas, like I eat corn tortillas. I make corn tortillas from home with my husband. Like got this masa book that I put here that's like a great way to make your own tortillas and all that kind of stuff. And I still gained 25 pounds, which is not like uncommon for people with fibromyalgia, I guess, to put on that kind of weight. And then when I did the cleanse, the medical medium cleanse every month, not only did a lot of my inflammation and my symptoms go away, but I also lost all the weight that I had put on. So even as a vegan, and then I gained it all back because I stopped doing the cleanse. So like, okay, I guess I need to go back to doing that cleanse if I want to maintain that figure. But there was somebody that made a comment to me when they found out I was vegan, where they were like, how can you be vegan and still have an ass on you or have weight on you? Like, you know, it was like an older person that was obviously very outdated. It was really offensive to me. Like it was really hurtful and just made me really angry that they commented on my body in that way, because I think it's really inappropriate. But that's a misconception that a lot of people have, is that if you're vegan, you're going to be this like little wisp that's deficient and that doesn't have any curves or weight on your body. And that's just not true. It's just not true. And, you know, if I was not having, you know, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, and I was still working out, I would be buff. Like I mean, I've never been buff, but like I'm a fit person. You know, I had muscle on my body. I'd still be lifting weights and doing all of that stuff and be strong like that. And I know plenty of vegans who are like that, who work out, lift weights, are fit as hell, and you know, really, really healthy, and they do not look like wisps. You know, so I really think that there's a lot of this kind of misconception or idea that veganism is for sickly, skinny white people that are protein deficient and anemic. And it's just not true. I'm Hispanic. I don't even really call myself Hispanic anymore because I don't actually really have any Spanish blood. I'm Mexican, half Mexican. And I have a huge ass and big boobs, and I've got weight on my body, and I eat really healthy, and I don't overeat really either. So, you know, and I've got a health problem that's totally unrelated. My labs are really good. I'm not deficient in anything, you know, just all the things. Like, it's just, there's a lot of misconceptions. So I really would like people to, like, if I were to say, like, I'm vegan 8 years and here's why you should consider eating less meat. I think that meat and dairy scientifically have a lot of like issues with our health. Like it affects our health negatively. Not only that, but the industries on the planet doing those things are extremely problematic. It is a political issue. It's a land use issue. It's the future of our planet issue. It's also an animal welfare issue. And the diseases and the illnesses that a lot of these, and the trauma that a lot of these animals are carrying, is just not good to put into your body. Your body's a temple. You should treat it like a temple. You should put good things in it. And, you know, that goes for veggies too. You know, I think that vegans can definitely get on a high horse and just centralize the animal welfare issue, but there's obviously issues in every industry. You know, palm oil is vegan, but it's not really if it's displacing orangutans and all the animals, right? So it's complex, you know, and I'm not a perfect vegan by any means. I try my hardest to buy locally and sustainably, but you know, I'm definitely not perfect. But those are things that I think are important to care about in this day and age, and I care about it a lot, and I try to be a model of what I care about in terms of living the life and not just preaching it. But yeah, I think that, you know, obviously do what's best for you, consult your doctor, work with a nutritionist or a wellness person. But I would say if you're afraid of being vegan because you're worried that you're going to get deficient in something or you're going to have a health complication, just work with somebody that's educated, that can help you. Have a doctor that's supportive, that can, you know, do your lab work and make sure that you're getting everything that you need. And it's not hard. It's really not hard. It used to be. The first time I went vegan when I was 17, there was way less options, but even in Portland, Oregon, it was pretty easy. But nowadays there's so many things, like Mary Ruth's, like I think all of their supplements and multivitamins are vegan, and they've got great options for B12, D, magnesium, iron. They have everything, and you can just get everything Mary Ruth's, and your supplements are good to go. Tons of protein powders and protein options. It's not hard to get your protein intake as a vegan at all. What else is there? So many good movies and books about it. I'll share a couple cookbooks that I have. I'm not a big cookbook person, but there are some really fun recipes in these. This is a vegan Christmas with this guy that has this funny haircut. Charred is the complete guide to vegetarian grilling and barbecue. So also, if you're somebody that's not ever going to go veg or vegan, but you have vegan people in your life, obviously you can just go on Pinterest and look at some of this stuff, but some of these books are just really fun for also additional veggie dishes that you can have at your get-togethers or your parties. This one, so I actually really like this one. Lauren Toyota, I follow her on Instagram, and I actually really enjoy a lot of her recipes that she shares online too. Yeah, she's got just a lot of really, this is obviously not healthy vegan comfort, like vegan food. This will definitely put fat on your body. So again, if you want to keep fat on your body, there's plenty of vegan options for that too. Because, you know, I'm not anti having some curb and some chunk. I know a lot of people are worried about that if they stop eating certain things, you know, and I'm like, no, you can totally keep your curves and be vegan. Like grilled quesadillas, like these are vegan, so good. I make quesadillas all the time. I'm Mexican, so I make vegan Mexican food all the time. But yeah, vegan barbecue, so that's also a fun one. And then, yeah, I've got the hormone balance one I shared already. And then, you know, it's kind of interesting because I really like have avoided buying a lot of the like philosophical preachy vegan books, not because I'm not pro them, but I just don't feel like I need to read it because I feel like I'm already on that wavelength. I feel like I would just get bored. There's another cookbook that I think this was gifted to me by my friend, the Mediterranean Vegan Kitchen. And then I've got this shortcut vegan that has a really good peanut sauce recipe. I forgot I had this book. I think this is actually what helped me get the good peanut sauce. Excuse me. And then what's interesting, so obviously, like when you get into health and nutrition, you'll read a lot of conflicting information. So like Medical Medium, he is very self-righteous in what he believes, and he's very anti the apple cider vinegar lifestyle thing. But I did the apple cider vinegar stuff for a long time. And the whole Bragg's family had these little books out, and I read them. It's interesting because, you know, obviously there's a lot of like guru heads that preach a lot of things about what's healthy and what's not healthy. But I will say that there's a pretty common denominator between all of them. And it's eat whole foods, don't eat processed food, make shit at home, do everything from scratch as purely as possible with the least amount of added bullshit. And so, you know, once you get to the truth and the heart of that message, it's pretty easy from there. This is Vital Living to 120. I don't want to live till 120. That was another kind of realization I had with some of my health issues. was, reflecting on how, the biggest thing that really influenced me outside of just caring about animals was that one of my dad's best friends when I was really young passed away from cancer. And we watched him, over the year that he declined. And I was one of the last people that he saw on his deathbed. And it was just really traumatic to experience and really sad. Like, it makes me really emotional every time that I think about it, because I watched this young man, like he was my age, in his early 30s, who was healthy. Like, this guy was super active, super healthy. He mountaineered, rock climbed, road biked. Like, he was fit. He ate like a healthy, like moderate healthy lifestyle, like nothing out of the ordinary. And he got diagnosed with cancer and, tried to fight it, and it took over and it killed him. And I think too, around the time that I decided to go back to being vegan, I had had friends pass away from drug overdoses, and people were getting diagnosed in my life with cancer that was related to lifestyle choices and things like that. And I just remember thinking, I never want to experience that. Like, I don't want to go that way. And if I can prevent this from happening, or if I can at least live a lifestyle that is somewhat preventative, then that's what I want to do. And so that was a big motivator for me in quitting drinking, quitting smoking, like trying to avoid, carcinogenic foods and things like that. And so I think it's hard, like, he obviously didn't pass away from a cancer that was dietary or lifestyle related. I think it had more to do with genetics, but it's been like one of my things that I feel really passionately about is like, if I can prevent something from happening, I'm going to do my best to prevent it. And I made that decision in my 20s because I felt like I had that time to do that. And unfortunately, with my health issues that I have now, I'm like, well, like, I don't know, like anything can happen, but I think it's still important to care and to try. But the other thing that I was going to add to that, like with this book saying live until you're 120, when I was really reflecting on that, I was like, I don't actually want to be here. I want to be here for a good time, not a long time. Like, I'm not really trying to live a really long life. For me, I think early 70s would be probably about as far as I want to go. Mid 70s, living beyond that honestly sounds pretty hellacious. And with the amount of pain and just like decrepit feelings I have in this body already, I just can't imagine. Like, I don't want to get any worse than I already feel. So I feel like anything after your late 70s just sounds kind of awful. So maybe if I go by my early 70s, I won't have to deal with it. I don't know, but there's plenty of people that seem to feel great living longer. I don't know if I can handle it. I don't know if I can handle being on this earth that long. So I really want to feel good while I'm here, but I'm not trying to live to 120 like the Braggs claim. So everything in moderation, right? I don't want to be too healthy, I guess. I'll start smoking in my late 60s again, maybe. This was another book that I bought recently because I have noticed that when I eat raw vegan for a portion of the month, I feel the best. I don't think that eating raw vegan in the entirety is actually good for me, because I have hit kind of a peak with it at times where I'm like, my body doesn't like this anymore and I need to go back to eating like comfort cooked food. But I do think that there's something about doing these raw food cleanses, because you're still eating on the cleanse, but you're just eating raw foods or steamed foods. And I think there's something about your liver and your spleen kind of getting to detox some of the things that come in oils and fats and all of that is really good for you. So I did buy, this couple, they actually do a school on raw food diets that I was thinking about taking some of their classes, but it's really mathy in here. Like, it tells you the calorie breakdown and also the like nutrition content of food in a way that's really boring. So I feel like, you have to be a real nerd to get into all of these graphs about things like spirulina and kale and all of this stuff. But this is how nerdy I am. And that's probably why my labs are so good is because I care about this stuff. But I'm not that structured with my eating anymore. I used to be a lot more structured. I'm more free flowing with it now, because at a certain point it just kind of all starts to feel like whatever. This is also a cool book. So I actually found this in a library that is remedies for health and healing with herbs. And this book is actually pretty well known in the herbal community. So there's some fun information in here about the different properties and kind of the things that they can do. And I've had this one for kind of a long time. And then this book too is another one I found in a free pile that is really great if you are interested in fitness when you're vegan. So Thrive Fitness. There might be some outdated stuff in here by now, but it's got like workouts in here and just some information on kind of, you know, how you should be living your lifestyle if you're going to be vegan and working out. It's a pretty easy read and not that interesting, but you know, I think that if you're interested in being vegan and you're worried about things, there's so many resources and education out there. My books, I feel like, are not even the good ones. I feel like I just kind of ended up with a bunch of stuff people gave me and that I inherited from free piles. There's a, you know, a handful in here that I bought, but yeah, it's just interesting. Anyways, well, I guess I don't have a lot else to add. I don't wear leather. I look for vegan brands or made in the US brands so that I'm supporting more local companies that are not traveling long to get to where I am. Pacifica Beauty has been a company that I've supported for a long time in terms of skincare products, but I feel like I'm kind of starting to age out of it. I feel like they target a younger demographic than what I'm starting to be, but there's so many vegan beauty products out there now. There's just so many options now that I think it's really easy to choose less harmful ingredients and practices. So I'm really happy to see it. And I wish that more people in my life were vegan, because I just feel like there's so many health benefits to it. But, you know, I agree with the to each their own kind of thing. Thanks for watching. Feel free to ask me any questions. Hopefully the next 8 years of veganism are just as great. I hope it just continues to get better. And also, there's a misconception that you won't break out or have acne or bad skin if you're vegan. That's also not true. I break out and have acne all the time. Gluten made that really bad, actually. I break out a lot less now that I'm gluten-free, but I still break out. Most of it's makeup related though, I think now, but hormones, you know, all that stuff, sugar causes breakout. So yeah, a lot of misconceptions to debunk. All right, well, I hope you found this video fun. It was just me rambling about being vegan for 8 years. And, you know, accumulatively, I've been vegan 13 years. So that's kind of interesting, but I wish you all a happy World Vegan Day and, you know, making the world a more peaceful place, one vegan at a time.